when he died, when he gave his life there, experiencing that utter rejection, and in the midst of that mockery, when he died there, that moment he died there, a way has now been opened for us to come into the very presence of God.
I'm giving you my heart and all that is within. I lay it all down for the sake of you, my King. I'm giving you my dreams. I'm laying down my rights. I'm giving up my pride for the promise of new life. And I surrender all to you, all to you. And I surrender all to you, all to you. I'm singing you this song. I'm waiting at the cross that all the world owes you. I count it all as lost for the sake of knowing you, the glory of your name, to know the lasting joy in sharing in your pain. And I surrender all to you, all to you. And I surrender all to you, all to you. And I surrender all to you, all to you. Oh, I surrender all to you, all to you. Lord, help us to surrender every area of our life. Show us, Lord, where we need to surrender. I surrender all to you, all to you. And I surrender all to you, all to you.
Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27. Let me read to you from verse 45 onwards. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was a darkness over all the land. This is talking about the last moments, or the last moments of Christ's suffering on the cross. It says, from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, I think you need to understand what this cry means. This is called the cry of dereliction, cry of the one who has been forsaken. Jesus, it seems, was forsaken by God when he hung on the cross. He had to be forsaken because he had to carry the sin of all humanity. So before God, here was God's Son carrying the sin of humanity, become sin, as Paul says. Literally embodied sin. The sin of the whole world was upon him. So the Bible says that God, who cannot even look upon sin, turned his face away from him, would not even look upon Jesus. And here Jesus on the cross cries out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Now this is not an ordinary cry. Here is a person who's been with the Father from the beginning. John's Gospel chapter 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, that is Jesus. He was with God. Jesus was with God. And he was God. So who is Jesus? He's the eternal Son of God. He's been from day one with the Father. Never been separated from the Father. Even when he came down to the earth and took on human flesh and was born in this world through the womb of Mary, he entered into this world as a man, but never was separated from the Father, really. He was always in constant touch with the Father. He was communing with the Father constantly. Remember, while he was on this earth, he would spend long periods of time with the Father, praying, communing with the Father. Always doing the will of the Father. Always knowing from the Father where he should go, what he should say, what he should do. He said, I'll never do anything that on my own. He says, only what the Father wants I do. Only what the Father wants to say, I say. And only what the Father wants to do, I do, he says. So all of his works, all of his teaching, everything came from a direct communion with the Father, where he constantly communed with the Father. He spent long hours communing with the Father. It was his joy and pleasure to commune with the Father. Sometimes he'll pray all night, spend time with God the Father. He was never out of touch with the Father, even though he was in the world. Such a person, that is, from all eternity he's been with the Father. Even when he came down in human form through Mary into this world, still he never really got cut off from the Father. He was continuing his relationship and intimacy with the Father. All of a sudden found himself cut off from the Father when he was hanging on the cross of Calvary because of the sin of humanity that he carried. All of a sudden he finds himself separate from the Father, cut off from the Father. Father turning his face away, Father wanting to have nothing to do with the Son. Here he cries, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And never has the Father not answered his cry and his call. His prayer never went answered. Remember, he said, standing at the grave of Lazarus, he said, Father, I thank you because you always hear my prayer. Always hear my prayer. 100% of the time Jesus prayed, 100% of the time answers came. First time in history, the only time when Jesus prayed, no answer came. He says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? What a terrible feeling that must have been. Now, I've been a few times with a couple, with some people that have lived together as husband and wife for more than 60 years. Then one of them passes away. Have you ever been in a situation like that? It's a very heartbreaking situation. These people have forgotten how to live alone by themselves, They've lived together for 60 years as husband and wife. All of a sudden, one dies. The other, you cannot even console that person because they've lived together and they just don't know how they're going to continue now because 60 years they've lived together and now they got to live at the end of their days alone by themselves. You can almost feel their pain and the agony that they feel at that point. Their sorrow is something that you can literally feel. But Jesus, not 60 years, for all eternity has been with the Father, never been separated from the Father. But for that moment, when he carried our sin on the cross of Calvary and became sin, the Father turned his face away and he cries, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And the Father does not answer. Just consider the moment and what that would have meant to Jesus. that kind of agony. What kind of agony that would have been for him as he hung there and cried to God. Now, as if that is not enough, look at the last moments of Jesus. He cries and the Father doesn't answer. That is shocking. He has never been through that, never been cut off from the Father, never been disconnected from the Father in this way throughout all eternity. And it has happened now. It's a moment of desperation. Cries, my God, why has thou forsaken me? And there's no answer. And then on top of that, some of those who stood there, when they heard that, verse 47 says, they said, this man is calling for Elijah, because he said, Eli, Eli. They thought, well, he's calling old Elijah. And that he's calling down Elijah to come down and save him and deliver him from the cross. So they started saying, maybe he's calling Elijah down. Verse 48 says, immediately one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with sour wine and put it on a reed and offered it to him to drink. And the rest said, listen to this, let him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to save him. Now this is a mockery. They're literally laughing at him, literally making jokes about him. Say, look, he's calling Elijah. Let's see if Elijah will come down. I'm sure he's calling Elijah. Let's see if Elijah will come down to save him. So on the one hand, the Father has forsaken him. Here is the Son of God crying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And there's no answer from heaven. He feels rejected, totally forsaken on the cross of Calvary. On the other hand, the mockers, the people that despised him, rejected him, their enemies, standing around and they are laughing at him and they're saying, let him alone. Let's see if Elijah will come down and save him. There is more of a description of this in Psalm 69, verse 19. You know my reproach, my shame, and my dishonor. My adversaries are all before you. Here is the description of that. And Psalm 22 is another great psalm of the suffering Messiah. If you will go to Psalm 22, it further describes what the reproach is. Here he talks about being reproached, how he is suffering reproach. And Psalm 22 describes that reproach in so many words. Psalm 22 and verse 6 onwards. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. All those who see me ridicule me. This is Jesus speaking from the cross. They shoot out the lips. Shoot out the lip. They shake the head saying, he trusted in the Lord. Let him rescue him. Let him deliver him since he delights in him. So here are people mocking him, reproaching him, laughing at him, saying, well, he trusted in the Lord, let him rescue him, let him deliver him. Since God delights in him, God is pleased with him. Remember, the voice came from heaven when Jesus was baptized, saying, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. Now they are mocking him, saying, well, he is the one that God is well pleased with. Where is he? Let him come and deliver him. So there's two kinds of things going on in the last moments. He's experiencing extreme rejection because the Father who sent him from heaven down into the earth as a human being to live and die here has placed the sin of the world upon him and forsaken him on the cross, forsaken him to die, so that he cries for the first time in his life in all eternity. He's got a new experience. He cries saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And there is no answer from God. And right in the middle of that, there is also, on the other hand, mockery going on. They're laughing, saying, he is the one that God is pleased with. Let him come and deliver him. Let's see if Elijah comes and delivers. They reproach him. That is how he dies on the cross of Calvary. Verse 50 says, Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. In other words, in an utter state of rejection, with everybody mocking and reproaching him, laughing at him, he gives up his ghost there and dies. Now, how did Jesus die? Consider how Jesus exactly died, Now, turn with me to Mark's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 43. Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent council member who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, coming and taking courage, went into Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate marveled that he was already dead. Now, notice this. You remember when this whole thing happened, the two thieves on the cross had to be put out. They had to be killed, literally. They went and saw that they were not dead yet, so they killed him, and they looked to Jesus to do the same thing. But they found that he's already dead. Now, Pilate was told by Joseph that he's dead and he wants the body to be buried. And Pilate marveled. He was astonished that he was already dead. How quickly is he dead? He says, and summoning the centurion, he asked him if he had been dead for some time. He wanted to confirm whether he's dead already. So when he found out from the centurion, he granted the body to Joseph. So Pilate himself was doubtful whether Jesus died so quickly, and how is it that he died so quickly? He would have lasted for some more time, it seemed like. But his death happened very quickly. So how did his death happen? Go back to Psalm 69, verse 20. What the Bible says about how Jesus died. Reproach has broken my heart, and I am full of heaviness. I looked for someone to take pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. So many people commenting on the fact of how Jesus died, they always point out to the fact that they went to see if they should put Jesus out, just kill him while he was hanging there suffering. They all found that he was already dead, and they all point out that he died of a ruptured heart. And here it says, reproach has broken my heart. How did Jesus die? He died because his heart literally burst from the agony and pain of this extreme and utter rejection he experienced on the cross of Calvary. A shocking rejection that he experienced. A suffering that is beyond compare. That is beyond anything that you could ever imagine. The Son of God from all eternity never felt separation from God. On the cross of Calvary, felt cut off from God completely, where he cries, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And there's no answer. So great was that agony, that pain, that it broke his heart. Not only was that pain, along with that pain is the mockery and the reproach of those that were hanging around, laughing at him, making fun of him, saying, let God come and save him, let Elijah come and save him, and so on. Reproach has broken my heart, he says. So Jesus died. In that last moment when he died, this is how he died. On the one hand, this utter rejection, shocking, utter rejection, something that you can never really comprehend the pain and the agony of it. The eternal Son of God separated from God because of sin. Utter rejection. God turns away, does not answer him, and men mocking at him, laughing at him as he dies, and he cries out again with a loud voice, and he gives up his ghost, and he dies. Now go back to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27. The story is not over. This is how he dies. Rejection by God on the one hand, mockery by people on the other hand. His heart bursts and breaks by the pain and the agony of the moment. Literally, reproach has broken his heart, and that's how he dies. And verse 50 says, Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. That's how he dies. And then with verse 51, then behold, the story continues. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked and the rocks were split. Something remarkable happens at that moment. It's not just that he cried and Father never answered and people were mocking and he died. No. When he died like that, something remarkable happens. The veil of the temple was rent in two from top to bottom. Now, veil in in the temple is not like the curtain in our house, If you just hang on it, it comes apart, But not the veil. The veil, they say, is about 4 inches thick, and it's very difficult to tear it apart like that in two. It's not an ordinary thing to tear it like that. And if you have to tear it, you don't start at the top, you start at the bottom. Great was the height. You start at the bottom if a man was trying to tear it up. But it tore from top to bottom. But not only did it tear from top to bottom, at the same time the earth quaked and the rocks were split. God is trying to say something. When Jesus died, in that moment, suffering that rejection, crying to the Father and Father not answering, and people mocking, his enemies standing around mocking and laughing at him. He dies, and right at that moment, the earth quakes and the rocks were split, and the veil was rent into two, from top to bottom. The veil was about 4 inches thick. No man could just tear it right down the middle into two. It's very difficult. It's God's act. God does it. It comes apart, torn from top to bottom. Why? The veil is the thing that covered the Holy of Holies from public view. See, the temple consisted of 3 areas: the outer court, the inner court, and the Holy of Holies. The outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place, in other words. The most holy place is the thing that is behind the veil. Now, that is considered a very holy place because they believed that that's where God's presence was there. Nobody could enter there. Only the high priest entered once a year, having offered a sacrifice for his own sins. And then he enters in there, having made atonement for his own sins. He enters on behalf of the people, sprinkling the blood of the atonement on the mercy seat once a year. Just once a year. It's not a joke to enter there. Now, he has to be very careful. If he enters there without making proper atonement for his own sins, he'll be a dead man. Nobody could go and even get him from inside. They will tie a rope around him, and the rope will be extending all the way out in case they heard a noise of him falling down dead there because his sins are not properly atoned for. They'll have to pull him with that rope. Pull him out. Can't go in and get him. It's not a joke because they were trying to teach under the Old Testament times through the temple and all the procedures. They were trying to teach that God is holy, man is sinful. Man cannot come into the presence of God, that he is a sinner, he must stay out, far away from God's presence. These things were taught in this way. So, such is the Holy of Holies, the place that was there behind the veil. The veil is the thing that covered the presence of God. If man ever saw the presence of God, he'll die. The veil was very important. It covered the place, covered the presence of God. Man cannot go in. God stayed there. That's the way they believed. But here, when Jesus died on the cross, when Jesus shed that last drop of his blood and died on the cross in such agony, crying out loud, that moment the veil was rent from top to bottom, signifying that when he died, when he gave his life there, experiencing that utter rejection, and in the midst of that mockery, when he died there, that moment he died there, a way has now been opened for us to come into the very presence of God. Ordinary people that were standing out unworthy could now walk into the presence of God because a way has been opened for them to come into God's presence. That's what it was signifying.
Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so good. There's nothing to fear, 'cause I'm here in your presence. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so, so good. And I just want to thank you with every beat of my heart. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so good. There's nothing to fear, 'cause I'm here in your presence. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so, so good. And I just want to thank you with every beat of my heart. You've given me eternal life, and your word to light my way. You've given me a spirit with new mercies every day. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so good. There's nothing to fear, 'cause I'm here in your presence. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so, so good. And I just want to thank you in every beat. You've given me eternal life. You've given me eternal life, and your word to light my way. You've given me a spirit with new mercies every day. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so good. There's nothing to fear, 'cause I'm here in your presence. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so, so good. And I just want to thank you in every beat of my heart. You've given me confidence. You've given me a confidence, and my soul is filled with peace. You are my provider. You supply my every need. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so good. There's nothing to fear, 'cause I'm here in your presence. Jesus, you are so good. Jesus, you are so, so good. And I just want to thank you with every beat of my heart. I just want to thank, oh, I just want to thank you with every beat of my heart. Oh, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you.